Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for inviting me along to speak today about sustainable development in the construction sector. Following on from the keynote speech this morning, what I would like to do is actually put into context how industry is responding to climate change, particularly in the construction sector. A little bit of flavour of why it is important to us at Skanska, how we measure sustainability in the delivery of our projects. Then I'm going to look at a couple of particular aspects of technology, and particularly design. I'm going to look at BIM, and then I'm going to look at some new materials as well. There's a couple of videos as well, just to give you a flavour of how our business operates, and as I said, how we're responding to climate change. Very briefly, a little bit about Skanska. Founded in Sweden in 1887, our first international contract was in 1897, would you believe, in Leeds, actually delivering some utility work in terms of concrete pipe work, listed on the actual Swedish Stock Exchange. Currently we have 60,000 employees. We're the top 3 in Europe. And our revenue in 2012, just gone, was 12.5 billion and a margin of 2.8%. Now, I've actually emphasised that because we should not be afraid of actually commercialising green. Yes, it's the morally the right thing to do. Yes, we have to look at how we deliver projects, but it does not have to cost money. A lot of clients think these days that green and looking at the sustainability agenda will actually cost money. It doesn't have to cost money, and hopefully today I can demonstrate that that is the case. Where do we work? We work predominantly in Scandinavia. We have a business now in Central Europe, a large business in North America, and an energy business in South America. And just recently, it's not on the map yet, but we've opened businesses in Qatar, Saudi, and UAE. Each of these areas had a specialism, and I hate to say that our Scandinavian friends are miles ahead of us in terms of the sustainability agenda and the response to climate change. There is technology that has been used out there for a decade now that we are just actually starting to adopt in the UK. But Skanska as a business is now looking at that very, very closely and be moving pieces of the jigsaw around to ensure that best practice and actual knowledge is moving from area to area. So for instance, in terms of energy provision, onshore wind, offshore wind, that was very much the expertise of the Scandinavian business. That is now in the UK, and we're looking at both onshore wind and offshore wind in the UK. And we had a particular expertise in PFI and private finance, and there was a question in the keynote speech about the use of private money. We've now exported that to both Scandinavia and to North America. But just an example of how a large global business is now looking at climate change and moving the skills and the experience round about to actually capitalise on the opportunities, but also to actually look at how we can actually benefit the areas that we work in. Why is sustainability important to us? It's important to us because we have 4 business streams. Of the 12.5 billion, 80% is construction, but we also have a residential development business, a commercial development business, and an infrastructure development business. So not only are we a provider of assets, we are also an owner of assets, a maintainer of assets. So long-term involvement in actual sustainability is hugely important for us. So it's not only about delivering assets, it's also about maintaining them and actually owning them as well. And this is how it simply works. This is a simple engine how Skanska works. Construction, as I said, is 80% of what we deliver. The one good thing about construction is it provides cash. And instead of giving all that lovely cash back to the actual shareholders, we actually invest that cash in the 3 development businesses: commercial, residential, and infrastructure. That in turn provides internal contracts for ourselves, and so it's like a large engine. We also have external construction contracts which feed the engine. As I said, unfortunately, our shareholders also want dividends as well, so some of the cash goes out. So very, very simple model, but as you can see, not only a provider of assets, also a developer of assets as well. Quick flick through some of the large projects that we're involved in just now. This is a very quick flick. Apple's new headquarters in California started 2 years ago, value 2.4 billion, architect Norman Foster, due for completion in 2015. A huge focus on energy provision there and actual sustainability. And I'll come on to some of the actual methods we use in detail in a few minutes. As I said before, PFI, the use of private finance in construction, can sometimes be controversial. Sweden decided to actually embrace PFI, and instead of actually picking a small health centre, decided to build Europe's largest hospital at 1.2 billion sterling. That's underway, due for completion in 2015. It will be a LEED Platinum project, a huge focus on sustainability, a lot of use of prefabrication, biomass CHP, and it is 17,000 rooms, so a huge focus on actual construction technology and how it can actually improve sustainability. A building we all know, it's the Gherkin. I wish I had a pound for every time that was actually shown on the television. Completed in 2012, and an iconic building in the centre of London. Øresund Crossing between Denmark and Sweden, completed in 2011. A little closer to home, the actually Scottish office down in Victoria Quay. And our last project, which is the State Hospital down at Carstairs. This was completed in 2012. And this is an example of a project where we took the design apart using BIM and came up with a fundamentally new model on how we could actually improve the actual life cycle, the energy and the maintenance costs in that building. And again, I'll come on to that a little bit later. So how do we measure sustainability? A lot of discussion this morning about climate change, and how does industry actually measure sustainability? Well, this is our timeline on how we've actually embraced the whole climate change agenda. Starting off in 1996, one of our business units got its ISO 14001 certification. In 1997, we produced a first environmental report, a global environmental report for the whole of the business. The UK business achieved ISO certification in 2000. And in 2003, we made it mandatory for all of our staff in the UK to go through environmental training. That's 3,500 staff. Everyone had to go through environmental training and updates every year. So this is us starting now to actually look very closely at how we actually deliver projects, how we procure projects, but not only the assets, also about how we as a business operate. We now have an environmental week. 2005 it started, and every year we have a full week dedicated, this is globally, to actual climate change. And there's a number of initiatives that actually we undertake every year. Last year I made the fatal decision of deciding that no one in my business in Scotland would use their cars, that they had to find alternative actual modes of transport for an entire week. Can you imagine that in the construction industry, that no one could use their own cars? We had people cycling, we had people rowing, we had people actually on the train. No one started work until 11 o'clock, but actually we made a huge impact in terms of our carbon footprint. In 2008, we started to introduce environmental KPIs into our business, and then we started the very controversial green car policy. Every member of staff in Skanska who has a company car cannot have a car above a certain CO2 level. So everyone with the big gas guzzlers and the Jaguars and the Mercedes had to get rid of them, and now our MD and our CEO both drive Polo Blue Motions. So the big cars have gone, and all our fleet are either now on biofuels or on hybrids. So that was a massive commitment from a company of our size to actually reduce our carbon footprint. 2009, we launched our colour palette, and I'll talk about that in a bit more detail. And then in 2011, we were delighted to win the Sunday Times Award for one of the best green companies, or the best green company in the UK. So, in terms of measuring sustainability, how do we measure it? We've introduced globally the Skanska colour palette, and it works very simply. We've chosen 4 areas to concentrate on. One's energy use, 2 is carbon, 3 is materials, and 4 is water. Now, if we are compliant and we just meet local legislation and regulations, then we are at the left hand of the scale, which is vanilla. where we are trying to get to is to the right-hand side, which is deep green. And that is net zero primary energy, net zero carbon construction, net zero and sustainable materials, and so on and so on. And what we do now is we measure each one of our projects across these 4 metrics. And you can see this is a project down in Bristol Schools, where we have achieved better than compliance on the building envelope. We've achieved better than compliance on waste management, and we've achieved much more than compliance on actual water usage. So every project in Skanska is actually measured on each of these metrics. Now that is hugely important to actually demonstrate to clients and to our supply chain what sustainability means and how we can use it as a simple metric. But in Skanska, we buy 80% of what we produce. We procure 80% of the projects that we're involved in, so it's not just down to us. We can put all the metrics in place. What we have to do is actually educate our supply chain. And it's not just about actually the actual product, it's also about the process as well. It's about how we get the materials to site. It's about the amount of work on site. It's about where people travel from. And again, on every one of our projects now, we try wherever we can to procure locally. 1, it keeps the investment in the area. 2, it's good for corporate social responsibility. But 3, it is hugely important for the environment as well. Why would you go and procure from the south of England for a project in the north of Scotland, with the transportation costs, with all the risks of getting the materials there on time? Why not procure locally? So we are now, on all of our projects, trying to procure within a 200-mile radius, if at all possible. That's employing all the staff within 200 and all the labour within 200 miles, but procuring within 200 miles as well. A very serious ambition. What it does mean that sometimes we take raw materials into the area and set up flying factories to actually provide the manufacture there as well. It is an ambition. We haven't achieved it in all our projects. We have a large prison in Peterhead at the moment, and an example of that is all the precast panels came from the Orkneys and were floated into Peterhead Harbour, where in the old days we would have bought them from Peterborough and actually driven them up the M6. And looking at it, it has cost us less money and it actually has reduced our risk. So as I said at the start, going green doesn't have to cost money. So it's about doing the simple things right. Everyone in the room, I will no doubt know about sustainable timber. Yeah, we've always been sourcing from sustainable resources. We are now extending that to quarry products. We're looking at waste. We're looking at providing more actual waste materials on site and reusing waste materials. We're looking at recycling, and as I said before, we are looking at the local supply chain. Embodied carbon. This is actually looking at all the materials that come on site and actually now monitoring the actual carbon footprint. So in the past, we put a cost plan together. Now in all our projects, we are looking at embodied carbon. How much carbon is actually used to actually produce the materials on site? And here we've concentrated on the percentage of the total building. And if you look at the concrete, we've then looked at the actual carbon produced in terms of concrete manufacture. And I know John MacArthur's going to talk about that in a bit more detail, I think, at the end of this session. So we're looking at the energy sources, we're looking at the raw materials, and we're looking now at the total carbon embodied in all of our structures. So that's not just carbon in production, not carbon in manufacture, it's carbon at source. So how do we move on and actually looking at getting to deep green? Well, there are a number of accelerators. First thing is we have to challenge our clients. So a lot of our clients think that green is going to cost money. I talked about the Carstairs, the actual state hospital. There we had an enlightened client, and we were able to demonstrate through the colour palette that they could move that building to a much more efficient building in terms of energy usage, in terms of insulation, in terms of actual air tightness, by fundamentally changing the actual design. Obviously, one of the main issues at Carstairs is security, and in the old days they would have gone for concrete walls or brick walls, but we managed to demonstrate that by using new materials in a different way, we could actually still provide the actual security requirements, but come up with a building that was much more efficient. And that is an example of actually educating our clients. Form a contract. We have a lot of adversarial forms of contract in the actual construction industry. There are new forms of contract such as NEC that allows the actual contractor to be involved in at the early stages of the contract along with the supply chain, and that is when you can make a change. That is when you can make a difference. It's actually getting involved in day one, in the brief, in the actual early design, and design sustainability in. Don't have it as an afterthought. Retrofitting any sustainable measures is going to be costly. Get it in at day one. New financial models. Again, in the keynote speech, it was talked about private finance and about actual private funding being used in construction. Again, an opportunity to get involved at day one when the cost plan has been put together to actually look at how you actually can introduce green measures into your asset. Supply chain, we talked already about that, getting the supply chain involved at day one, getting the actual knowledge. I don't have the knowledge about all the materials. Those that are providing it, those that are manufacturing it, have that knowledge. Get them together very early on in the actual contract. That, again, allows you to actually design sustainability in. And it's all about leadership. It's about visible leadership. It's about actually behaving properly and setting examples. Obviously, communication is important, both internally and externally. Construction industry is not good at actually shouting about what we've achieved. We're not good at it. We need to do more. And last but not least, it's about design. It's actually about considering the local environment and using the best technology. And now I'd like to look at one aspect of that, which again I think Fred's going to talk about later in a bit more detail, and that's BIM. So what does BIM stand for? BIM is Building Information Modelling, and there are two definitions here. One, it's a method to describe the building, its spaces, structures, components, materials, with essential information and properties. The model is purely a container for the information, but the other thing, which I think is more important, BIM can be described as a collaborative approach to making sure that the right information arrives at the right place at the right time. Anyone have a guess in terms of BIM, how many Ds we are now working on? You obviously have 2D, you have 3D, you now have 4D. Any thoughts on what dimension we're now working on in the construction industry? Sorry? 7? Close? We're now working on 16D. That's 16 dimensions to a BIM model. So you have your base BIM model, and then you can attach to that model all these attributes. So you can look at the design and look at how the design is developing. You can obviously look at the commercial aspects. You can look at how it's being procured, safety, clash prevention, 4D simulation, fly-throughs, artist impressions, construction in terms of buildability. But you can also look at green and the green aspects of the building, life cycle, and FM. On all of our projects now, we have a BIM model, and on every project, we actually produce a 16D full BIM analysis. So on every project, we look at every aspect of the project using the base 3D model. And why do we do this? Because as I said at the start, it is much easier to actually look at introducing sustainable measures at the start of a project when you're here in terms of optioneering. As the project progresses, then the ability to change becomes less, the cost increases, and the actual cost of actual change is hugely influential on taking it forward. So, quick flick through how BIM can actually help us, and then a quick video of actually how Skanska are adopting BIM.
BIM, or Building Information Modelling, has started to become a well-recognised term within the construction industry. At Skanska, BIM is seen as a new way of working, enabling a structured flow of information throughout a project's life cycle. Applying the principles of BIM has proven to make a significant positive impact to many of the core activities on a project, from early client engagement and planning during pre-con through to design, commercial and construction management, and then operations. The Skanska Group recognised the potential early and took the bold decision that every design and build project in Skanska from 2009 onwards should adopt the principles of BIM. The objective? To to make Skanska more capable of winning and successfully delivering projects throughout the world. Skanska UK has been seen as an early adapter of this new way of working. We have already been using BIM principles on some of our projects for a few years now. And within the UK 2015 strategy, BIM plays an important part. BIM is acting as a catalyst for change, the Skanska way.
So what is BIM to me? BIM provides us with the cornerstone for the design, planning, construction and operations of our projects. I see BIM as enabling us to advance our sustainability credentials and speed up our journey to deep green. And I believe that we just now are starting to see the benefits that BIM can bring to our projects and to our organisation. BIM supports our aspirations to deliver our clients' expectations safely, more efficiently, more predictably, both in the construction and the whole life phases of the projects, to enable us to outperform on every job, every time.
At Skanska, we currently structure BIM into 12 applications, spanning from powerful visualizations that support our bids to a tool that enables more efficient facilities management. We can now start to see the first practical examples of how various applications of BIM have enabled different operational units to enhance their performance. The first story is from Utilities, who applied elements of BIM to a recent bid for a complicated services installation along a busy road just west of London. Using latest survey technology, they were able to scan the ground and capture accurate information relating to existing services. The existing services were then converted into BIM data, combined with the proposed new services, and the scheme was then optimised for cost, construction works, clashes, logistics, etc. The model gave them the opportunity to present a highly competitive and green bid containing multiple options for the client.
I knew about 3D modelling, and I felt there must be a better way of doing design on site and understanding the problems we face with clashes in cable installations and utilities. Went to the BIM team, and they were very helpful. They provided me with a solution to overcome the problems in the form of BIM. We also use the images to try and plan where we're going to do our trial holes, because obviously the image is very powerful, but there are no substitutes actually having a look in the ground. But having these images really sort of ties down where the trial holes will be best suited to be excavated. Of course, this saves congestion. As you can see, it's quite a busy junction, saves money, and ultimately helps us plan the job. So yeah, we can see nothing but good points for this BIM.
The next BIM example comes from Communities who have started to build their first Moderna Hus project in Brixton, London. The project is the first of its kind in the UK, transferring best practice from Scandinavia on how to build green and affordable homes through a more industrialised approach, standardisation and a high degree of repetition. Communities have taken these principles to the next level by applying BIM on all activities throughout the process. Design is managed into a central BIM model and quantities taken off. Programming and production planning is achieved via the same source of information, which saves time and costs. The client can sign off the design in a 3D virtual environment, and the project is delivered right first time.
One of the biggest benefits for me in designing using BIM that we've experienced on Cold Harbour Lane has been the consistency in coordination of the design.
We have noticed that we'll have to introduce new transfer panels in order to cover the loads coming from the 7th floor. Okay. Can you make use of the model to see the consequences it's going to have on your apartment layout below?
Yeah, we can do that quite easily. We can add in a new internal wall. The customer benefits from 3D visualization because they can clearly see what they are going to get, and they can also understand and accept design changes and options.
Our Civil Operating Unit gives us the next example on how BIM can support a project during construction. The widening of the M25 is a large and complex project with tough timescales. By utilising intelligent 3D information direct from the BIM model, plant on site becomes more accurate and overall productivity is improved. A further positive effect of this new way of working is higher engagement with the workforce.
Once I've changed part of the design, for example this slip road, if I've amended the slip road and I've got to issue it to the relevant teams.
I can see the real benefits in the information modelling. We call it electronic information. And by the way, I've just received an email notification through Business Collaborator from Martin. So I'll just prepare that data for site use. It's normally something it'd take 2 to 3 days for a turnaround. So let's go outside.
We're going to give the card over to the operator now, which is Joe. Joe, here's your BIM card.
Cheers, Mark. Thank you.
Get stuck into the model. Give it a go. Right, the data's been loaded onto the machine now. The machine drive is just to start, but what makes this different between this machine and others is the 2 GPS sensors on the back. That makes that a 3D machine. If you look at any other machines that won't have it, this machine is going to work as a master, and all the other machines will follow as slaves. That's the biggest difference. But as you look around, no batter rails or profiles anywhere.
The final BIM story comes from the Public Operating Unit. Their BIM work at Royal London Hospital has been recognised outside of Skanska, and the team have received a number of industry awards. The latest innovation is the use of a tablet PC to provide a construction site toolbox of applications for progress monitoring, site diaries, and to support an efficient and correct verification process, all based around the BIM models. Practically, this means that BIM has moved from the design office to the construction site. High-quality information in the handover benefits also the Facilities Services Operating Unit, which is highly dependent on this to operate the building in the most efficient way.
I'm here in the atrium area carrying out my final compliance checks. I'm using the tablet PC, which is a site link to the BIM database. The BIM has enabled us to outperform our room completion targets. I personally believe the tablet PC can and will orchestrate our overall goals in achieving 100% compliance with 0 defects.
We have seen 4 examples showing how BIM is currently being implemented in various parts of Skanska UK and in various stages of a project. Every project has its own story to tell, but all demonstrate the same potential to establish a new way of working that also enhances project engagement. The examples show how BIM can help us create more competitive bids, better coordinated design, more efficient project delivery, and happier clients at handover. In short, benefits that will help Skanska to outperform on projects every time. The examples shown today are just a few examples, and across Skanska there are currently many initiatives underway that will shortly have their own stories to tell on how BIM has made their projects more successful.
I'm just conscious of time, and as the only contractor actually here today, it would be a fallacy if I was actually behind programme. So I'd just like to conclude by actually saying that's just one example of how technology has been used in the construction industry to actually improve efficiency, drive out waste, but more importantly actually respond to the sustainability agenda and climate change. Other things that we are looking at the moment is actually a whole host of research on materials. That's looking at no carbon concrete, reuse of foundations, and actually also energy walls. But I'll save that for another day. So listen, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me this morning, and I look forward to receiving questions at the end of the session. Thank you.